So hi everyone, I'm assuming you guys can see my screen.
Yep.
My name is Manushi. I am a member of TOHacks. I work on the technology and operations team, and today I'm just going to be going over Git and GitHub and how you can leverage it for TOHacks 2021. So just a quick agenda. I'm going to be talking about what Git is, how you can set up your environment, initializing your project repository, and just some basic Git commands that you can use, and just kind of some next steps and other additional resources that you can view and take a look at. So first and foremost, what is Git? So Git is a version control software that is used to log changes and edits made to a file directory. It is super cheap, it's lightweight, and it's really fast. And a great thing about Git is that it's very similar to, I would say, like the notion of Git is similar to Google Drive and Google Docs, how you can see like previous versions of a specific presentation or a document. So that's super helpful, especially when you're working with a large amount of code and you're working with a lot of various different members. And then GitHub, on the other hand, is a cloud-based service, cloud-based hosting service that lets you manage your Git repositories. It's super, it's a huge sort of platform in the open source and file sharing industry, and it's very helpful for just open source projects and file sharing of that sort. So if you haven't already, I'm just going to go over just kind of setting up your environment. So the first thing is that in order to set up your environment and use Git and GitHub, first of all, you need to download Git. So usually most Mac and Linux machines have Git pre-installed. So you can check that by typing in Git version onto your terminal. Once you've typed that in, either it will say Git is not found, or it will send back like the version of the Git that you have installed onto your machine. The story is a little bit different with Windows. With Windows, most machines don't have Git pre-installed, so I've posted some links that you can use to install Git rather. And once you've downloaded Git, another important thing is just creating a GitHub account. So this is very simple. All you need is an email and a password, and by creating an account, you're able to make repositories, push code, and also view other open source projects. So here's just an example. So as you can see, I have Git installed onto my computer. If I go into my terminal, I'd be able to, when I type in Git version, it will output the version that I have. And that's just another way that you can use, another tool that you can use to determine whether or not you have Git. And once you've successfully created an account, this is what the page will look like. So on the main screen, you would have a feed of people that you follow. So if you're following any prominent open source individuals or any projects, or just like any of your friends, you'll be able to see the projects that they've made contributions to or projects that they've created. On the left-hand side, you would be able to see your current repositories, and this plus icon, you'll be able to make new repositories, and you'll be able to make some cool things as well. So once you've sort of set up everything, you have Git installed and you have the GitHub account created, the next step would be to initialize your project repository. So especially for first timers, and this is your first time at a hackathon, and it's your first time working with Git, the very first thing that you do is you initialize your repository. So this essentially tells like the version control software that from now on, track and log any edits and changes that I make to a directory or a specific file. It's just an initialization step that is required for almost all projects, and without initializing, you won't be able to use any of the cool commands that Git has. Another way that you can also do, you can also like initialize a repository is by cloning it. So this is usually used for any current projects that are already on GitHub, and you want to clone them, and you want to be able to like download a copy of the code or a copy of the files or whatnot onto your specific laptop or your computer. So as you can see, if I want to go ahead and clone this specific MIT Deep Learning repository, what I would do is I would search on GitHub, whatever I'm trying to search, or the project name. I would click this little arrow that says code. I would copy this link, or which is like the GitHub link. And what I would do is I would go onto my terminal, I would type in git clone and then the URL. And depending on the size of the file, it may take a little time for everything to get downloaded and everything to get cloned. But once you're ready to go, it will say 100% completed. And that's when you know that you'll be able to access all the files and everything of that sort. And then the next step would be kind of just initializing it. So here I have created a TOHacks 21 folder underneath my desktop. And for example, that's the folder I'm going to be using to store all my projects and my files and my code. So before I even start coding, before I even have anything set up, the first thing I would do is I would go onto my terminal, navigate to the folder, and I would initialize it. This will bring up a message saying initialize, or if there's an error, then it will tell you the error. And it's just a great way for you to get feedback from Git itself. What I usually like to do is once I've initialized it, I like sort of syncing my repository to GitHub itself. So the way that you would create a new repository onto GitHub would be, as I mentioned, you click on the plus side, or the plus, and select new repository. This will create a new repository where you have to fill out the name, description. You can choose the privacy settings, whether you want it to be public or private. And you can also choose to add a README or Git ignore file, which will ignore specific files you specified. And private repositories are only seen by yourself and other members that you invite. So they're also a great way to kind of, if you don't want to push anything live, or if you don't want anyone to see, you can also use that feature. Once I've set up the Git repository, there would be a screen like this that would show up. So what you would do is you would copy this link, which would be the same, which would be your repo link, and you would go to your terminal and again navigate to the same folder, and you would type in git remote add origin, or you can choose a different name such as main. But essentially what this does is it syncs your it creates a connection between your local repository and your remote repository, so that way you're able to push any changes or any files or any code up to the remote level, so that it can be accessed by other members in your team or just anyone in general. And then now I'm going to go over some of the basic Git commands. So these are very general, but they're very important as well. So the first sort of set of commands are git add, which essentially adds either all or a specific file that's in your working repository to Git staging area. So what this does is it takes like the specified file and it pushes it up to the staging area, which is kind of like a location within your computer that stores all like the log files, like the Git files that contain all the changes and such. So once you sort of added those files to the staging area, what you would do is you would create a commit with a message outlining kind of what the commit is. So for example, if I was working on a file and I've updated, let's say, the color of a nav bar, then once I've added all the files or that one specific file, I would go on to my terminal and I would type in git commit -m. The M stands for message, and just type in my message. Messages are usually short and concise, so that way if someone were to look at that, they would know instantly what you did or what changes or bugs you fixed. And once you've committed, the next thing you would do is you would push you would push that specific file or that commit up to the remote branch. So this essentially will take it from your local workstation to the GitHub repo that I showed in the previous slides. So for example,
Manushi,
yeah.
Sorry, you have a couple questions.
Can we?
Is
it okay if I say the questions for last? I can like just answer them. But yeah, is that fine?
Yeah, of course.
Cool. Yeah. So for example, if I'm creating a project description file that contains a description of my project, then what I would do is I would navigate to the location of where that file is located. I can either type git add dot, which means include all of the files, or I can type in git add and then the file name. So in this case, it would be project description. You'll know it's successful when sometimes you won't receive any feedback from Git, but sometimes if it fails, then it will let you know. For example, if I misspelled the word description, then it would say unable to find, and then it will tell you like the error. And then once that's done, the next step would be to commit. So once I've after I've added the files, I would commit by typing in git commit -m, and then I would type in the message. So in this case, it's added new text file outlining project description. And as you can see, it's successful and the commit was made. It also tells you if you've updated a specific file. It also tells you if you've how many lines of code you've inserted and deleted. So that's also a great way for you to track based on whether or not you're getting the right file and whatnot. So once I've committed and I've added all the changes, the next step would be to push these changes to the repo. So in this case, my main branch or my master branch is called master. So I would essentially type in git push origin master. And in the way that GitHub workflow works is there is usually a master branch, and from the master branch, you can have like mini branches. I'll talk about branches a little bit later, but usually you have a main branch, which is similar to like a tree. Like you have the root of the tree, and then you have branches coming out of it. But as you can see, the changes have been completed, they've been updated. So if I were to go and check my repository, it will say that I have successfully, you'll be able to see the file and you'll be able to see the recent commit on the top like bar. Yeah, so speaking of branches, branches essentially are a way, like a feature that is what makes GitHub and Git very important. You're able to, like, the way that features work is usually when you're, the way that branches work is, for example, if you want to create a feature, if you want to test out something, instead of changing the main code, you would create a branch from the main code that you can use to create an independent line of development and to test out different features. So that way you're keeping the main code base the same and you're not making any changes. So in that case, if anything goes wrong, it's not really affected, but the main code is not affected. So the way that you would create a new branch is you would type in git branch and then the name of the branch. And then what you would do is, in order to get started working on that branch, you would type in git checkout. So checking out a branch essentially means that you're moving the direction. So instead of working on the main branch or the master code, you're working on that specific branch. So all the commits and all the changes that you make are going to be made to that branch instead of like the master branch. Oftentimes, let's say a test doesn't work out or a feature doesn't work out, what you can do is you can delete the branch. So you can delete a specified branch if you don't need it, but you have to make sure that you're not already on that branch. So for example, you've not already checked that branch out. So for example, let's say I want to make a branch within TOHacks 21 folder, regarding, front end, and I want to make all the front end changes. What I would do is I would type in, Git branch and then the name of the branch, and I can check where I am by using the Git branch command. So as you can see, the master branch is highlighted and there's a star beside it, which means that I am currently on the master branch. So let's say, for example, I want to delete it. So the way that I can delete it is by checking it out. So I would type in git checkout and then front end, git checkout master, and I would delete it by typing in git branch -d and then the name of the branch. And yeah. And then, so once you've sort of like worked with branches and you've sort of made the changes, the next step would be to sort of merge the branch to master. So for example, when you're working with a team of 4 during TOHacks 21, and you have, let's say, 2 developers, there's one main developer and there's sort of like a front end developer. The way that it would work is you would have the front end developer sort of create a branch from master that will include all the front end stuff. And once like the front end looks good and everything is good to go, you would merge the front end with the master code. So that way the main code isn't affected until you merge it, and everything is sort of good to go on that end. Yeah, so as you can see, there's just a picture. So the first thing that you would need to do is you would need to check out the branch that you want to currently merge to. So in this case, I want to merge front end to master. So I have to check
Manushi, are you still there? Sorry, everyone. Give us a minute to have Manushi join back. I think her Wi-Fi is giving her some trouble. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think I left off over here, but as I was saying, usually a typical GitHub workflow is you have a master branch, which is sort of very consistent and it remains the same throughout the process. You can have different branches branching from the master, and you can also have branches branching out from a branch. So for example, this is a branch from master, and this feature branches from that branch. So there's a lot of different ways that you can sort of use GitHub and utilize it for your own sort of needs, but that's just one of the possible ways. And this is just a summary of what I've mentioned. So the working copy or your working directory, you would add sort of like all the changes and the files to a staging area, and then from the staging area, you would commit it and to sort of your local repository, and then from the local repository you would push it to a remote repository, which is what you saw on the GitHub account. Yeah, and just in regarding next steps, definitely from now until the hackathon, use these links and view, just look at the documentation of how GitHub works, because GitHub is an amazing tool and it's super useful, especially if you're going into the tech field. You're going to be using it on a daily basis, and it's also a good way for you to practice, version control and learn about like best practices. The first link that I have here is a good starting point. So this takes you to the official GitHub website and is very simple. And the bottom 2 are a little bit more detailed, and they talk about some of the security the security behind like, GitHub and just committing in general and how everything works in GitHub. So definitely do check that out. If you have any questions from now until whenever, feel free to reach out to me on Discord. I'll be more than happy to help. But that is it from me.